We have wasted 8 minutes of your time, and for that I deeply apologize. We will now turn to the news that is happening in the National Football League, and this is a new development. From within the last half hour or so, the NFL has announced that it has appointed an investigator for the supplemental investigation of the Washington Commanders. Now that Tiffany Johnston, who did not previously cooperate with the 10-month investigation conducted by Beth Wilkinson, has alleged misconduct by team owner Daniel Snyder publicly, they have hired an investigator to handle that specific allegation. Tiffany Johnston says, and this is a quick summary, I defer to her details from her congressional explanation. It wasn't sworn testimony, but she told it to the world. She's telling it to Congress. She claims she was at a dinner. Daniel Snyder put his hand on her leg until she forcibly removed it. And then after the dinner, he tried to cajole her into his limo. And then she ultimately got away. And there is at least one person who has come forward and claimed that he witnessed that interaction, and he's a longtime employee of the team. So the team last week tried to hire its own investigators. And the league said, no, that's not how it works. You don't get to go pick your own investigator, especially because Daniel Snyder's already said publicly that this claim is an outright lie. So the NFL hires an investigator. Myles, it is not Beth Wilkinson. It is Mary Jo White, who you may remember from such NFL investigations as the Carolina Panthers in 2017 and Bountygate in 2012. She's back on the scene, and she is going to investigate the Tiffany Johnston claims. I don't know why they didn't just bring back Beth Wilkinson. I don't know why. I guarantee you Daniel Snyder didn't want her back, and maybe there was some sort of a negotiation where Snyder said, no way, no how, to Beth Wilkinson, because Beth Wilkinson, I reported it. She was ready to recommend that they get rid of him. So he's not going to want her back doing this last little piece. But why wouldn't you bring her back? She's already done the investigation. She already knows the lay of the land. She knows the organization. So this stinks to me on the surface, given the fact that Beth Wilkinson wasn't brought back. And I'm going to be very interested to see what Mary Jo White has to ultimately say. And they are going to make the findings public because there's no one to protect here. Tiffany Johnston's already spoken publicly.
Yes, well, that is what they said in the announcement, that, there's nobody to protect. And that's part of why they're already going to say that they're going to issue a written report, and what the findings are, they're going to have that written out for this investigation. And that's going to be obviously much different than what we saw last year at this point now, where the Washington football team, as it was then known, let's call them Washington Commanders, where everything there was released just before the 4th of July. And then we didn't really figure out all of the things that were uncovered in that Beth Wilkinson investigation. But I mean, if Daniel Snyder is the one that's saying no way, no how to Beth Wilkinson, why does he really get a vote? I mean, I understand that he is a part of the fraternity of NFL owners, right, that make up the league, but at the same time, he's the one that's being investigated. So, I mean, I don't feel like, at least in this case, the league should be kowtowing to anything that he wants. And, if this new investigator who has done investigations before is going to come up with something that may or may not say that Dan Snyder should sell the team or should have to sell the team, I mean, I just don't really understand why at any point they would really want to do anything that Daniel Snyder wants to do. Like if this is what's going to cook Daniel Snyder's goose, then it should be cooked by whoever knows it. You know what I mean? I understand that aspect of it, but it just, I don't know. Something about that kind of stinks, as you said.
Well, and it may be something as simple as Daniel Snyder said, if you appoint Beth Wilkinson, we're not going to cooperate. Now, you don't cooperate at your own peril. But the problem is Daniel Snyder is wired to fight. And they know that they are getting into a protracted battle with Daniel Snyder if they move against him aggressively. So Mary Jo White enters the fray. And I don't know what to think about her involvement in this, because two examples I can point to with the Panthers. One of her recommendations was that the NFL eliminate the use of NDAs for situations like this so that people will be able to come forward and cooperate when there are investigations. The NFL, by all appearances, has never acted on that. So that's one instance of Mary Jo White maybe saying something that her financial benefactors, the people who were paying her bills, didn't want to hear. However, back in Bountygate, And I remember this vividly, Myles, and this was a very small piece, but to me it spoke to the heart of the credibility of the NFL when it was trying to paint the Saints as a rogue organization, that it wasn't some sort of a cultural problem throughout the NFL like steroids in the 80s, that the Saints were the only ones who had a bounty program, the only ones who were doing this kind of thing, and that was baloney. But they went so far over the top in trying to convince the media that the NFL was right and the Saints were wrong. They hired Mary Jo White to do an independent review of the evidence or something like that. And the thing that did it for me, and this is a very obscure point, but there was a piece of video that had been captured by NFL Films. And she insisted that that video showed Anthony Hargrove, I believe, saying, "Bobby, give me my money," and that supported the idea that they were beating up Brett Favre during the 2009 NFC Championship with the anticipation that they were going to get the money that came along with knocking him out of the game. And that piece of video, I remember watching that 100 times, and it finally clicked that that's not what she claimed it was. It was somebody else saying it. It was a small point, but it was enough to get me to say, I reject everything she says. I reject everything the NFL says. And Myles, that was the moment 10 years ago when I decided that anything they try to get me to believe, I'm going to assume it's BS until they prove otherwise. So anytime I hear Mary Jo White, I got, bugs on the skin, frankly, reminder of the BS that she tried to spoon feed the media and successfully fed it to everybody except me. Maybe I'm the one that was wrong, but this is my hesitation with Mary Jo White, because I think, like all good corporate lawyers, she's going to come to the conclusion that she thinks the people who are paying her bill want her to come to, which means she's really not investigating anything. She's just starting at the ending point and working backward to justify whatever it is that she thinks whoever hired her wants her to do.
So that would be the biggest difference then between what somebody like Beth Wilkinson would investigate and, how she would come to her conclusions versus somebody how Mary Jo White would come to her own conclusions. Am I reading that right from your perspective?
Well, I think the whole system stinks. The idea that we're going to go get an independent investigator, you're paying their bill. And smart lawyers pay attention to what their clients want if they continue to hope to do work for that client, or if they like to have other assignments like that. If you get a reputation for somebody who doesn't go along with what the people who are paying the bills want you to do, you're going to find yourself out of work pretty quickly. You're going to find yourself not having these cost-insensitive clients, like the managing partner of the firm that I initially worked for, Jones Day Revis and Polk, headquartered in Cleveland, by the way, said in a meeting back in 1992-ish, and I was sitting there and I was like, cost-insensitive client means we want to work for a bunch of people that got big problems and big money, and they're never going to look at the bills and say, why are you charging me this? Why are you charging me that? So that's what these lawyers want to do. That's how they get rich. They find a big corporation that they can work for, and they can put 10 lawyers on the case, and they submit a bill every month, and nobody ever asks any questions about it. They just wire the money, and it goes, and it goes, and it goes. And if you're not in a position to get that work, you're not going to get that kind of money. And I hate to be that cynical, but I lived in that world. That's how it works. So if Mary Jo White wants to continue to get a call from the NFL once every couple of years and, have, I don't know how much she's going to make off of it, somewhere in the six figures, I would say, by the time she does all the work and charges all the invoices and puts the associates on it and just goes and goes and goes, does the right investigation, gets up to speed, which Beth Wilkinson wouldn't have to do. My point is, she's going to give the NFL what it wants, not what the facts would ultimately require her to do. And I'm actually supporting Dan Snyder in this. I'm not saying let's go find somebody who's just going to rubber stamp the NFL if it's at the point where the NFL wants to get rid of Dan Snyder and she's going to find that Dan Snyder did. I don't want any predisposition. I want somebody to come in fresh and to look at this with a clear and critical eye and reach a conclusion. But with Beth Wilkinson not being the one who does it, you're wasting the experience that she already has in assessing the credibility of these witnesses, assessing Dan Snyder's credibility. She already has opinions about what he's saying and whether he's believable. And I know that I'm kind of contradicting myself by saying that because she'd be kind of prejudging, but she has a legitimate basis for it because she's already done the investigation. She's not going to be duped by him. He's got a better chance of duping Mary Jo White because Beth Wilkins is going to show up and say, no, we've done this before. No, don't feed me that crap. We've done this before, and he better be honest with her this time because she smoked him out before, I believe. So I'm always hesitant about any of this because I really do think that, and this goes back to Deflategate, it goes to Bullygate, it goes to Bountygate. They start at the end and they work backward, and then they piece it together forward to reach the conclusion that they think the person who hired them wanted them to reach.
Okay, yeah, so there was a lot there, and as you said, you did kind of contradict yourself a little bit in the middle of that. When you're talking about having fresh eyes on something.
That's okay.
That's
I'm allowed to.
White is. No, I'm not saying you're not allowed to. I'm just trying to piece it all together for myself, right? And for hopefully the audience who maybe wants to listen to a different voice. I don't know. But you've got that aspect of it. But then you're also...
Hey, tell me about Baker Mayfield.
Okay. No, we're not that. Don't do that yet. I'm just trying to talk it out, right? I'm trying to talk it through because...
Go ahead. It's fine. It's good. That's what we're here for.
Right, exactly. No, but I think that there is something to having fresh eyes and trying to look at it objectively. But what I hear you saying, and what I tend to agree with, is that if you are coming at this as Mary Jo White has perhaps come at things in the past, where you're starting from a conclusion and you're working backward from there, versus somebody else who might have even more fresh eyes, not necessarily just about this particular issue, but for an NFL issue as a whole, that's different than, say, somebody like a Beth Wilkinson who has worked on investigating the Washington Commanders before and who has probably at this point a very good BS detector for somebody like Daniel Snyder. So it's not just that there's a binary here, which is where I'm trying to sort of help you with the contradiction that you just kind of made. There could be different avenues of getting to what the NFL is trying to investigate here, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I just want somebody to investigate this fairly and even-handedly for everyone involved,
yes,
and to have no predisposition that would taint the investigation, no wink or nod from anyone at 345 Park Avenue that guides Mary Jo White in the direction that the people who are going to pay her bills want her to go. I want them to let her do a full and fair and honest investigation. And one of the reasons I keep going back to Beth Wilkinson is I believe she did a full and fair investigation. I think Dan Snyder probably regrets the moment that he hired her initially to do the investigation before the NFL took over the process. And if my memory serves, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, the NFL took over after the report emerged of the outtakes from the cheerleading video, and that became a thing, and it needed to be a thing. It needed to be an issue, and that's when the NFL said, we're taking over this investigation. But I feel like Beth Wilkinson was allowed to do a fair and honest investigation and to come to her conclusions. The problem is the NFL didn't want her conclusions. See, she didn't play ball, and maybe that's why she's not been hired again. Maybe it's that simple. Maybe this conversation is allowing us to properly thread the needle. The reason she didn't get the second assignment is she ultimately didn't give them what they wanted in the first assignment. They didn't want a recommendation that Daniel Snyder be forced to sell, because at that time, Myles, their predisposition was to protect Snyder in order to protect themselves. Not because they want to help Snyder, but because they don't want other owners to be in a similar jackpot. This time around, the fact that they didn't go back to Beth Wilkinson, it could be a recognition that she didn't do what they wanted her to do last time. And it just could be, yeah. And I don't know what they want this time. Maybe they do want to nail Snyder this time. Maybe they do.
Right.
Maybe they want the conclusion to be that Snyder did it and he should go. But I just hope that whatever they secretly want, Mary Jo White is allowed to do her investigation unfettered, unaffected. And I'm concerned only because she played the game 10 years ago when she was hired to handle Bountygate. She was not an independent voice. She was an advocate of the league's position. That's why I'm concerned that she's going to pick up a vibe as to what they want, and she's going to give them what they want rather than doing a fair and honest and clean investigation. I hope I finally made sense. I hope.
No, I don't think you. Yeah, I know. But it sometimes does with you. That's okay. I'm used to it by now. We've been doing this for a year. But I feel like it's one of those situations where, you know, one of my favorite sayings, won't someone rid me of this meddlesome priest, right? And maybe Beth Wilkinson heard that saying and was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I was hired to be an independent investigator. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to investigate this, and I'm going to come to my own conclusions, and then I'm going to maybe make a recommendation, right? I'm going to figure out what it is that's going on here and then say, this is how we can try to remedy this particular situation. And if the NFL didn't necessarily like the conclusions that she came to, that's maybe why we didn't get a written report. Because frankly, and this is not exactly what we're talking about here, but it kind of is, I've always found it to be a little bit disingenuous when you're saying we can't disclose these names. These women requested anonymity, and that's why we can't issue a full written report. That's garbage, right? You just make it Jane Doe. Jane Doe number 1, Jane Doe number 2, Jane Doe number 3. You don't have to use anybody's name, you know, when you're describing these situations. So at least now that's not something that we're going to see with whatever comes out of this Mary Jo White investigation, because as we said, the NFL has already said that they are going to issue a full written report on this and make it public because these accusations were made in a public forum. If nothing else, we'll at least get some sort of transparency there.
We definitely will. And what you said is right on the money. It was baloney. It was bogus. It's one of the reasons why the commissioner gets $65 million a year, because he stood up at the press conference at the October meetings and took the questions and answered them with a straight face, even though the words he was saying were BS, as you said. Yes. And they were. And that's part of what he gets paid that money for, to take the heat and be the pincushion for the owners who stand off to the side and never have to answer those kinds of questions. The team has issued a statement saying that they are satisfied with the selection of Mary Jo White. Of course they are, because the alternative was Beth Wilkinson, and they will fully cooperate, which makes me only more suspicious that someone said to the league, we don't want Beth Wilkinson back in here. We don't want her back in here, and we're not going to cooperate, or we're going to make a big stink. We're going to make a big issue about Beth Wilkinson if you try to hire Beth Wilkinson. We'll attack your decision, and we'll point out that, you know, she didn't secure her file because she apparently had a draft of a report that ended up in the hands of somebody from 106.7 The Fan in D.C. How do you explain that? You could argue that in and of itself is reason not to trust her as the investigator the second time around, because whether she did it intentionally or accidentally, she didn't secure her stuff. And if a lawyer can't secure his or her stuff, you can't trust that lawyer to properly follow the rules of discretion and secrecy and confidentiality. It's one of the most important things any lawyer can do, is not spill secrets in any forum whatsoever. So who knows what would have happened if they would have picked Beth Wilkins, but I have a feeling there would have been a fight, and that this was a compromise by the NFL. But it is somebody who has given the NFL in the past what the NFL wanted. That is my concern. This should not be about what the NFL wants. This should be about what the facts require. And let's see where the facts go. Let's see where the investigation goes. And we're going to continue to watch this very carefully. Congress is. Everyone is. It's not going away. And it all can be blamed, frankly, on whoever it was that decided to weaponize some of those 650,000 emails to take out John Gruden. Because before that, it was done. It was gone. Yep. It was over. It was over. They had won. They had put together this ruse, and it had worked. And until John Gruden went down, it was never going to come up again. All right.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.